and then we'll start the webinar. All right.
Sounds great.
Well, hello. We are just gone live. This is Jim Morgan. I'm with the Fishers Historical Society, and we have with us Mark R. Hunter, who's the author of Hoosier Hysterical, which is absolutely it's a hoot of a book. So he's kind of taking a very lighthearted look towards Hoosier history. I think that would be a fair assessment towards that.
Some people probably think it's a criminally lighthearted look.
Well, introduce yourself, Mark.
Well, first of all, you got to put that R in there because there are 1.4 million Mark Hunters on the internet, I've discovered.
Okay.
But I have lived in Noble County all my life. I lived in Albion all of my adult life. That's northwest of Fort Wayne, for those of you who aren't familiar. And I've been a 911 dispatcher for the last 30 years. And I was a volunteer firefighter for 42 years here in Albion. And I also wrote a humor column for 3 area newspapers for 25 years. So in addition to that, I've got 11 books published, some of them fiction, some of them nonfiction. And that explains why I'm very tired all the time. Pretty much covers it.
So you're writing a Hoosier humor column. So that kind of explains where this came from. This is I got this for just to give you an idea. My wife bought this for me for Christmas, and so that's how I became aware of you. And it's a great book. It's a lot of fun. It's nice little short stories, So, it's a great little book to have around for if you want to read 15 minutes at a time. So, yeah.
I had a lot of fun writing it. And
so now tell me, where did you find these stories?
A lot of time it was just researching, but a lot of the other time we just drove around. We spent a whole summer just driving around Indiana. Of course, we're in Northeast Indiana, so going to Southwest Indiana to do research isn't all that easy necessarily.
Yeah, especially going to Evansville, you can't get there from here. So,
My favorite story of how I found something, I've told this before, but we were in, I think it was West Central Indiana, going down a 4-lane highway, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I looked across the road and there was a historical marker. Well, that's what we do. We see a historical marker, you do a U-turn and go over there. I said, what's this all about? And it was the site of the westernmost naval battle of the American Revolution. And I stood there looking at that, and I looked around, and there was no lake, there was no stream, there wasn't even a pothole. And this is Indiana. I couldn't understand it. So I did some research later on the internet and old books, and I found out that, of course, 200 years ago, Indiana was mostly swamp. And in the spring, they'd have these floods, and you'd have rivers that were suddenly 3 miles wide. And in that area, there was some British that were trying to get some supplies to one of their forts. They were ambushed by the Americans, also in canoes, and it was technically a battle.
A canoe naval battle.
It was a canoe naval battle. It didn't sound like it was all that exciting, but it fits. So sometimes I find stuff just by stumbling across it.
So, one of the, the fact that I'm the president of the Fishers Historical Society probably already gives you a clue that I'm a history nerd. Okay, so I mean, it's why else would you be there, right? But it's that's where it is.
There's no money in it,
huh?
There's no money in it.
No, there is not any money in it. So I was really taken back with some of the things you found that, like for instance, the Battle of now I'm drawing a blank. The canal there under.
I hate to tell you this, but I have a horrible memory. So but I know exactly which one you're talking about. It happened.
Yeah. But I'm drawing a blank as to what I know that creek. It's just a little creek that runs underneath
Hogs Run.
Hogs Run. Yes,
that's right.
So there's right now you have to be very, very brave, and probably with an AR-14 before I would go down Hogs Run, because it's concrete on all sides. The little creek running in the middle of it, and it's right in the middle of downtown, and it's a tunnel. No, thank you.
Part of the original part of the original creek now has a football stadium standing on top of it.
There you go. Yes. So
So
it's not an area that I'd want to go hang out in. Okay.
it's not the same.
Probably a little bit of a homeless hangout or whatever else in there. But I didn't know there was a big battle there for the Civil War. Basically, it didn't really turn into a battle necessarily, but it was kind
Yeah,
of an exciting situation.
basically the Democrats were having a convention, and there was tens of thousands of them in this hall, and about I believe it was about a half dozen Union soldiers decided they'd go down there and disrupt it because the Democrats were wanting to secede from the Union themselves. And the soldiers walked in and they caused a little bit of a commotion and they walked out and there wasn't much to it. But what we found out later is that every one of those people in that hallway was armed. In that hall was armed. Later on, when they were trying to get away from the city, they were stopped. The train that they were on was stopped over Pogue's Run, and the Democrats just started just tossing weapons out into the Pogue's Run just so that they wouldn't be confiscated and found and be arrested possibly. So they call it the Battle of Pogue's Run, but it was mostly just a case of them being stopped and searched. Apparently, there was a lady on the train who hid, I believe it was 4 or 5 pistols on her body because nobody was going to search a lady. And on the same night, another train was stopped by some soldiers wheeling a cannon out on the tracks so that they had to stop and be searched. So it was just a very exciting night, but there was no actual shots fired that we're aware of.
Yeah, but it was the fact that they were getting ready to try to overthrow the Indiana government to go secede from the Union.
Yeah,
I never heard that one. That's kind of a big story, you know.
and
So
The Union Cavalry showed up at this too.
yeah.
It's amazing to me. And you find this stuff all over the place if you just care to look, but it's not going to be in regular history books.
Well, it's like you and I talked about the story about, and we had someone on from the Benjamin Harrison home talking about this, the fact that Benjamin Harrison's father, who was a congressman, his grave was robbed and his body was taken. Who knew this stuff unless you start digging into the other little stories, So
Exactly.
so now where did you so how did you like have tips on places in here, or how did you find all these stories?
I had some tips, but most of what I got was from reading old books and researching the internet. And of course, the internet has now become a place where you can find out about almost anything.
Right.
So I found a lot of stuff there in various websites. There's all sorts of old Indiana books that are online or that you can get at the local library. I was a little bit surprised when I went into their historical section at our library here and found some of my books.
Oh,
It was,
really?
it was a surreal moment for me.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever, if I need to talk to Mark. He owns a store called the A Taste of Indiana, and so basically everything in that store is from Indiana. And he has quite a few Indiana books and stuff in there as well. He's over at like 71st and Benford, on the north side of town. But his business is he makes like gift baskets for conventions coming in. We'll order like 500 gift baskets, and so that's where his business is. But there is a retail store there as well. So
That's kind of neat. I like that idea.
but that could be a good. You might want to meet him because he would like this book. Now, do you have other books about Indiana, or is it this
Well,
was
not exactly.
okay?
The first book I ever wrote is actually a history of my fire department here in Albion.
Oh, okay.
It took me 25 years to write that, from the time I started until the time it actually got published. That was, and then the other one is actually a traditionally published book, and it's about Noble County in Indiana. So
Okay.
it's not about Indiana per se, but it is about the history of Noble County, and a very photo heavy. That was a lot of work, a lot of work to do. We've got another book that's going to be coming out probably in the fall. It's called Haunted Noble County, which again is about old stories from this county. And we just started working on a sequel to Hoosier Hysterical.
Oh, okay. Great.
Just began it. I keep telling my wife I want to call it Hoosier Hysterical, or uh, it's not going over with her very well. I'm going to
Yeah.
have to come up with something else.
So, what I was going to say, obviously. So, what are some of your favorite stories in this particular book?
Well, the story of that Westernmost naval battle is my favorite by
Yeah,
far.
right.
You know, Pogue's Run, of course, is great. Uh, I liked I liked going all the way back. I'm actually leafing through the book right now because my memory is so horrendous. I liked going back and finding out about the early history about the giants that were supposedly around Indiana at the time, and the Paleo Indians and all of that other. That the Indians were very surprised to find out that we were the first people to ever come here.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute, we're here. But the story of how the railroads came through, it's a big tapestry. This whole, and it's all about transportation to a large extent. I think one of my favorite stories is the fact that just a few years after the state was formed, they tried to build a canal system all through Indiana. They
Yeah.
called it the
Bankrupted
Mammoth.
Indiana,
Yeah, and yeah, bankrupted Indiana after
which
only a
is
few
why
years.
we have the in our Constitution now, you have to have a balanced budget.
Isn't that a great idea?
It is a great idea.
Other
And it's,
government bodies should think of that.
yeah, it worked out pretty well. So we still have the canals around we have to drive by periodically. So
Yeah, well, in my county is Sylvan Lake, which was built to feed the canals.
hmm
And there's to this day, there's still a dam there, and it's become a huge tourist attraction. But if you go a little ways away from that, you can actually drive down Canal Road, which is either the location or right beside the location of one of the canals that was built to feed water to the system. So yeah, they're still here and there all over the place.
Yeah, they're down around Broad Ripple. There's some canals down there. They're really pretty, but they never really panned out for what they were going to be. So
No,
yeah,
they didn't. And technology overtook them too. All of a sudden,
yeah,
the railroads were here, and they had a lot of advantages.
right,
Another one of my favorite stories, excuse me, allergies, is Fisher's. I can't remember his first name now. Carl Fisher's, who started the Indianapolis 500.
right.
It's my understanding that there was a different Fisher that started the city of Fisher. When I
Yes, there was. Yes,
Yeah,
a different
when I
Fishers. Yeah,
when I went into it, I just assumed it was the same guy, but it's not.
yeah,
But this guy was quite a showman. Uh, he would have been run out of town on a rail for being a charlatan, and if he hadn't gotten lucky here and there. But he built the Indianapolis 500. He was largely responsible for the first intercontinental road that went through Indianapolis. And then he was proposing a road going from north to south into Florida, right to a town that he happened to own some property in, because he knew. But the first race that he ever conducted at the Indianapolis 500 was a balloon race,
yeah,
a hot air balloon race, and he was one of the participants. So this guy was quite the character.
yeah. It's quite a showman. You were in your book. You have a article or a little story about John Chapman.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, Johnny Appleseed,
Johnny Appleseed.
which
Yeah.
you've got a picture of the grave there, which is up
Assuming
on
that's
top
where he's
of a
been.
hill. It's right
Yeah.
by the Fort Wayne Coliseum. It's up on a
Right.
hill, and I've been there several times. And it is in Harry Ball's Park, okay, which is the old mayor of Fort Wayne. And
Best name ever.
I'm a big fan of John Chapman because we've been lied to forever about who he was. The story on John Chapman changed during Temperance Ladies. They rewrote the story.
Well, that makes sense.
Okay, because John Chapman was a real estate developer and speculator. So he would go out ahead of the settlers and he would pick out the best places, stake claim to those. He'd plant apple trees on them so that they would be worth more because they had a food source. And really, where the value was at that time, a lot of America was actually the total Midwest
Yeah.
was actually developed by Applejack whiskey because you could it would store you didn't have to worry about spoiling over winter, so it was a tradable item. So they would have these apple trees that could make Applejack whiskey. So he really made his fortune with Applejack whiskey by doing this. Well, the temperance ladies didn't want that part of the story in there, so then they came up with the Tin Pan Hat and that he was kind of a nut. Okay, and so that was the story we all learned. You
I
know,
can't understand why they wouldn't want that story in
yeah,
there.
and so to honor him, when I was there, I broke the law because you're not supposed to have alcohol in Harry Balls Park, but I took a bottle of Applejack, you know, and poured it on his grave because I'm like, hey, dude, yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. So,
If you were cautious, you could have just had a bowl of Applejack cereal instead.
well, there you go. But that was not
Yeah.
quite the same thing.
There's
So,
got to be a drink somebody's made called the Harry Balls.
yeah, you would think so.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Well,
Maybe when
Applejack. Well,
you,
Applejack. I was trying to look it up, trying to because it's so much a part of history, especially Midwest history. And so I was doing research on it and found out that there is a Applejack distiller in New Jersey. The
oh,
family is called Laird, Laird,
Laird, yeah.
and they've been distilling it for 9 generations since 1600s. And same family, same
Wow.
name, and one of the Lairds actually worked for George Washington, or was in under Colonel George Washington in the French Indian War, and he brought in some of this Applejack. Washington liked it. Washington had the biggest distillery in the country at the time. He made more 10,000 gallons of whiskey a year. He took that recipe and he used to make the Applejack as well, which I just thought was so. I always have a bottle just so I could tell that story, you know. So yeah,
I hate to say this, but I don't think I've ever tried it before.
it's I'll tell you what, it's real good with like apple cider. You know, if you're like in the fall, you know, it's well worth that. It's kind of it's a apple brandy with 51% corn whiskey is really what it
I'll
comes
make a
down to.
mental note.
Yeah.
I hardly ever drink, so probably one glass of that would just put me right down.
There you go. But again, these crazy stories, and like for instance, I have been to that grave site, which I thought was pretty fun up there. So you know,
Yeah.
to see that. So what you went, you know, you've been all over the place. You've been in Fort Wayne. You've been to the old fort that they recreated. You got a lot of
Mhm.
stuff about the 500, the some of the courthouses around.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that probably surprised you the most, other than the uh, Western most naval thing?
I guess maybe it was how much Indiana mattered at one time or another to the history. Of course, we were the geographical center of the United States for a while. We were
Right.
the population center of the United States for a while at a different time. But everybody talks about how many vice presidents were from Indiana, and there was a reason for that. I was very surprised to find out how very much we used to matter in presidential elections. And they had elections where the voting participation was upwards close to 100%. And we were a swing state. You know, if you could take Indiana, you were going to win the election. So we've got a highway of vice presidents up in this area now because there's so many vice presidents that came from Indiana. I had no idea. I grew up thinking that we were kind of a podunk state that didn't really matter in national politics that much. But there you go. And that kind of thing, I just love running into that kind of thing and finding out something I didn't know. The other thing is, of course, our area up here is kind of rolling geography, and yours that general area is kind of flat. I was very shocked the first two times I went down to southern Indiana and found out just how rugged it is.
Yes, where the glacier stopped.
Yeah, and Brown County,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful place, but
About Martinsville, you know.
yeah, and of course there's caves down there you can visit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I encountered the grave of Daniel Boone's brother in a cave. He was, I don't remember exactly when he died, but he had a really rough life. But he ended up living in southern Indiana, and he found this cave, and they buried him near the entrance. But people were starting to steal pieces of his coffin and a few bones, so they put him back together into a new box, and they actually put him in the cave, so you can see it as you're passing by on the tour, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daniel Boone was up here for a while too, but he turned around and went back, and Squire Boone didn't. You got to wonder if he regretted it because he got injured more than once from the Native Americans. And for some reason, they didn't like him up here. Go figure. Yeah.
Well, it's been interesting. I mean, we've got some great stories here in Indiana, but you have to unearth them. There was a historian that I read, and it's a line in his one of his books hit me like a ton of bricks because I'm going, this is so real that I will think. He talks about some of the people from history that played integral roles of history.
Hmm.
But as he put it, they were under the waterline of history. So in other
Hmm.
words, they were there. They were kind of Forrest Gump. They were there doing all these things, but no one remembers that they were there. It was
Right.
they were under that waterline that actually made it into the your eighth grade history book or whatever. So
Yeah. Well, a lot of people outside of Indiana have never heard of George Rogers Clark, who basically secured the Northwest Territory for America during the Revolutionary War. He
right,
wasn't in that many battles, but it was pretty tremendous the things that he did. And
yeah,
of course, he had a relative who was of Lewis and Clark fame. Yeah, it all comes back and relates to a large extent, and that's one of the things I want to write about in the new book is the way people who come and go to Indiana have made an impact, whether we know it or not.
right.
And people that you may not think had anything to do with Indiana had an impact.
Well, John Morgan and Morgan's Rangers were
Oh
running
yeah,
all across, southern Indiana. I found out that my two times great grandfather was part of the ones chasing him through. So that was kind of cool. But
things didn't go too well for him after the first couple of
no,
times.
yeah, he kind of his career didn't end well. But but anyway, so yeah. But there's
Oh, so as long as we're talking about crews, the Reno gang
yeah,
loved the story of the Reno gang. The first moving train robbery in history happened in Indiana, and these Reno brothers were responsible for it. The thing that kills me is that they made a movie about it, and after they had written the script and were planning the movie, Elvis Presley came on board to play the part of the one Reno brother who was not bad, and they completely changed it.
oh
It's
really?
called the movie Love Me Tender.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And it was about the Renos, but because Elvis Presley was in it, it became an Elvis Presley movie, and a lot was changed. There's been other movies about the Renos.
Well, like I said, there's a bunch of stories that are out there, that are really interesting. The things that have impacted things, but it's just like they don't get a lot of press. If you're doing a new book, if you've not been to the catacombs in downtown Indianapolis, you might want to take a look at that.
Ooh.
It was a political. It was like I don't know, a president at that time, Market Square Arena, or it was a big convention center or a convention
Mhm.
center. It was where they'd have big meetings, have political meetings, and it burned down. Okay, but all the basement underneath it, and they still have one of the arches that was going into the place is still there. It's like a gateway arch, but underneath there's these full catacombs down through under the city. It's worth going down and just to take a peek at it.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to have to look into that. Emily and I
Seriously
like going,
creepy. Okay, it's
well, we
and
like
then
creepy stuff.
people go down there and have seances. You'll see the chairs are around whenever they do their things or their chants or whatever they do. But it's nice. It's a fun tour to and because it's from the early 1800s when that building was there.
Yeah, Emily and I love spooky places, and we love things like catacombs and caves.
Well, it's right by
It's
City
funny.
Market.
I'm sorry.
It's right by City Market,
Yeah,
but it's
we'll
actually
definitely go there.
under.
We've actually only been in downtown Indianapolis once, and that's when we went to the museum and saw the statuary down there and all that kind of thing. We're not big city people, so we kind of have to force ourselves to do it. But when we do it, we always end up
You
liking
go
what
into
we
the
find.
uh, Soldiers and Sailors Monument, or
Yep, we were in there.
okay, because it's pretty cool
There
to the
was
museum under.
yeah, I would like to go there again because we didn't spend as much time as I would like to have spent down there.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of
Well,
big things and little things. There's
I made it was a tactical error, but I was much younger at the time. My son, who's 38, but at that time he was maybe four, okay, 3 or 4. We went and I put him on my shoulders and went up all the stairs to the top of that thing. That was even with a
wow,
4-year-old. That was I don't know that I'd want to do that again. So I
yeah.
definitely don't want to do it with him on my shoulders now. I don't think I'd make it. So, he might have to carry dad
No,
down.
and he would probably wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, probably
It was
not.
quite a
So,
climb.
yeah,
It's quite a climb even when you're only carrying a camera.
yeah. So, but
Yeah.
it's a ways up there going to the top of that thing.
I have a picture somewhere. Oh yeah, it's on the back of the book. I believe I believe that this picture was taken there, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
looks like it.
Yeah, I
Or
just
either that or the military museum. It looks like it could be that too.
it could be. I can't
Yeah.
recall for sure now, but oh, Emily says it was at the military museum.
Okay, it's what it kind of looked like on that wall to me, that
I
door.
just I gave that eagle a glare and I thought if this comes out, this is going to make a great picture.
Yeah.
And well, and I really liked it. We went all the
Well,
way down
this is
south.
what, huh?
I was just going to say we went all the way down south and saw stuff like Santa Claus and Lincoln's
Yeah.
Boyhood Home. And for those of you who are fans of the old Roseanne TV series, we went down and took a picture of her house because that down in Evansville, I think it
Yeah,
was.
I think it's Evansville.
Yeah, right down that neighborhood there is where the house that they did their exterior shots stands.
Yeah,
So big
Evansville
stuff
is
and little
hard to
stuff.
get to from here because now it's better now because they got 69 through, but it is, you better make sure you fill up. You want to fill up in Bloomington because there's only one exit between Bloomington and Evansville.
Really?
Yeah, it's a
I did
crane.
not know that.
Crane. Whoever designed that road had no sense. It was like if you break down, you're basically SOL. So
Wow, that's a terrible idea.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe they'll put some in later on. We kind of like taking the back roads to a certain
Yeah.
degree. We'd rather take a state road than a interstate because you see more that way.
Have you ever been over to Madison?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty over there. I like it.
Madison and Clifty Falls State Park, which is
Yeah.
this is another example of what I was saying earlier. Everybody thinks Indiana's flat until you get to a place like that and start
Well,
seeing the
right now,
waterfall.
Indiana basically developed from the north down and from the south up.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of amazing that Indianapolis ended up as big as it is, but
right.
they
Well,
had
the
to say,
original, the original, well, the original state capital was Corydon.
Corridon. Yeah, we took some pictures of the original building.
Yeah, and then they were thinking about putting it in Strawtown, which is north of Indianapolis, about I don't know 10, 15 miles. It's
Ah,
in Strawtown today. I think has 6 houses. Okay, it was, but it was on Cicero Creek, so they thought the creek was navigable. It is not. Okay, but so they ended up in White River, which is not navigable either. But
no, well, they sent a paddle boat up to, and it actually reached Indianapolis, but it got stuck on the way back, and that was it.
yeah,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of how Indy got picked. Did that, from that standpoint.
Yeah,
But probably somebody had some money involved in it that sold it to the government. But
yeah, there was a couple of guys down here who had homesteaded before the Native Americans had even left, before the treaties were signed. Technically, they're illegally,
yeah,
but I think one of their properties is what ended up being the center.
yeah. It's kind of like Fishers. Some of the things you're talking about getting a historic marker. Our society, like it was last year, maybe my years have a tendency to run together, but it was last year, I
Yeah,
think, that we ended up getting a new historical marker at a grave site in Fishers to commit because of a grave robbing that had there. Fishers was a big keystone of grave robbing. Okay, Fishers,
really?
Indiana. There was a doctor there who was funding all this and had these guys working for him, and they were selling the cadavers to medical hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And he got caught. He was like the fair haired son. He was the star of the whole thing, and then all of a sudden he was not. Okay, as
Yeah.
far as that when word got out where he was making some of his extra money.
That happened a lot, as I
Yeah,
understand it. Wow, you don't that's not one of those things that you want your town to be famous for.
yeah. And
But
then right now we're trying to get one. We're working on getting one for Germantown because Germantown got flooded. Geist Reservoir sits on top of Germantown. Okay.
oh,
Yeah. So Germantown's no longer there. There's there's foundations and stuff probably underneath there,
hmm.
but they basically eminent domained it and it disappeared for years. When like Google Maps and stuff first came out, it still showed Germantown in the middle of the lake, but that's kind of finally gone away. So
Wonder if anybody dives on it.
I
It's
don't
people,
know. It's not the clearest water, but
well, those reservoirs when they cover up stuff like that, they don't seem to ever be very clear.
right.
My wife, near where she grew up in southeast Missouri, there was a town that was buried that exact same way underneath their reservoir. And she says people do dive on that from time to time, but we don't know if they've removed all the bodies from the grave sites or
Yeah, I have no idea.
yeah.
That might be something for you to look into.
She says they didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll make a
Yeah.
list. Actually, I've already
Yeah.
started making the list, so it shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah. So, well, very cool. Well, I'll tell you what, I've really enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun. When's your new book going to come out?
Um, the new one that's based on Albion Noble County, the haunted Albion Noble County, is going to be coming out around Halloween time this year, if all goes well.
Okay.
However, the new Hoosier Hysterical book, we're planning on releasing that sometime in the middle of next year in time for the uh, anniversary of the United States,
Oh,
which
very
would
good.
be,
Yeah.
I'm thinking 250. Am I wrong on that? Because I'm not very
I
good at
think you're, yeah, I think you're about right. So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what made me decide to write it. I thought there's an anniversary coming up again.
Yeah.
So we're going to research all the little places like the giant praying mantis and the world's largest ball of paint and things like that. In addition to the people, I already wrote a long one about Colonel Sanders,
Yeah.
who it turns out has more to do with Indiana than people knew. And also, of course, Orville Redenbacher. He's a favorite target of mine.
Right.
He was one of the leading makers of popcorn.
Well, it's like, nobody knows this about, everybody, trying to figure out what a Hoosier is.
Yeah.
There is a very, very likely story to that. And it was an itinerant black pastor by the name of Hoosier. And he was extraordinary. This was back in the early 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s. So we weren't even a state yet. Okay. We were the Indiana Territory. And he would come and he would preach. And he had a massive following. And everybody called them, the people that followed him, Hoosiers people.
Huh?
And so if even like, I think our state library or whatever historical has basically said
Oh,
that's where it came from.
that's
Hoiser, I
amazing.
believe. But he was so basically Hoosiers is from a black pastor from way back, way back.
I encountered three or four explanations for Hoosiers, and that's one that I didn't
Yeah,
find. So I'm going to have to look that up.
it's
That's as
very
good an
interesting
explanation
stuff.
as any. And
It actually makes more
yeah,
sense than the other ones do. So
I
anyway,
bet those
but
guys that
anyway, so
took
I
over the
love this
state.
kind of stuff. Huh?
I was just going to say, I bet those guys who took over the state for the Ku Klux Klan back in the 20s are rolling over in their grave when they hear
Yeah,
that.
that'd be fun for them. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
I
would
like
be
that idea.
perfect. Yeah, so and it's well deserved. So
Yes.
yeah, so Well, I'll tell you, I've really enjoyed this tonight. Looking forward to doing some other ones. Again, for anybody that's looking, it's a fun little read. Um, he has his tongue very deeply planted in his cheek through most of it, but he will
Mhm.
also teach you by accident some different history. So so I mean, I don't know if it was
Well,
accident or you were kind of trick people into learning something. So anyway,
if anybody wants to check it out, of my 11 books, I think that 9 of them are related to Indiana in one way or another.
okay.
Even the fictional ones, a lot of them take place in Indiana. So just for fun.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's a lot of fun. I'll get you a copy of this video. You use however you want. Okay. But
Great.
it's going to be on our Fisher's Historical Society's Facebook page.
Mhm.
And this will eventually be on our Fisher's Historical Society YouTube page. Okay. So, all righty,
Mhm.
sir.
And I
Thank you
favorited
much.
your YouTube page.
All righty. You take care. Bye bye.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
See
You
ya.
too.